Hello subscribers and welcome to the subscription video this month. We're glad to have you back with us. This month we have two delicious coffees to you from Colombia. And for that reason I'm joined here today by Ebdrup, who does our sourcing in Colombia.
Yes.
Thanks for joining me.
Thank you.
So the first one that we'll dive into is this one called Desarollo. And as usual, there's a filter roast for filter subscribers and an espresso roast for espresso subscribers.
Desarroyo is a place we've been working with. It's a farmers association actually from the region of Huila in Colombia. And the interesting thing about Desarroyo is this kind of cooperative structure. A lot of smallholder farmers go together in these regions. This is from around Gigante in the northern part of Huila.
Which is a small town.
It's a small kind of village.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. And the thing is, in this area, it has a long tradition of coffee farming. And throughout the years, coffee farms have gotten smaller and smaller and smaller, being passed through generations.
So that means that for each of these farmers, it can be quite challenging to market and sell your coffee on your own.
Exactly.
Which is why they're a member of Desarollo.
Yeah.
But Desarollo is not a cooperative.
No, exactly.
It's an association. So,
yes.
So what is the difference?
So the main difference is, like you work in Kenya, so you know cooperative structure is where you have all the post-harvest processing is combined.
Yes, you can say that every farmer is a member, and that also means that everything is piled together and everything is paid just from the amount of cherries that the farmer has delivered.
Exactly.
But at Disarroyo, they do it differently.
Very differently. So, like I said, it's smallholder farmers, so they have a little land, but they do all the processing themselves as well. So they also put themselves in a position of creating a certain quality of bean. They can choose different markets. Of course, being a small farm, it's very hard to go to the traditional market because usually the quantity is a lot bigger. So they're really focused on the high quality end. And you know how it is with growing coffee or anything you grow from the ground up. It's everything you need to take care of, every little process in order to make something really, really good. But these farmers, they do their own processing. So they have their own wet mill, they do their own drying, and then it's collected at El Desarrollo.
So we started working with Desarrollo, I think it's about 8 or maybe even 9 years ago.
Yeah, I think 2011 maybe. I think Peter started working with them for the first time.
Yeah. And we started buying a lot that was comprised of several different farmers from this association. So the way it works is that Caravela, who's the exporter there, have a cupping lab in Gigante. They will cup all the different samples from all of these farmers in the association. But it also means that this structure, that each farmer who does an extraordinary job is also getting paid more for their coffee. So if you put more work into the coffee as a farmer, it actually pays out for you.
Yeah, exactly. So I've been working there close to 6 years now, and of course I work with the same people every year. So it consists of 3 parties, like you said. We have the distributor, which is Caravela, and then of course we have the farmers, and then us, who's the buyer. And throughout the years, every time we visit, we cup and we grade these coffees together. So we have a conversation about what we think quality is. So it's not just like a broad spectrum where you just pick out and you know how it's going to be and everybody agrees that that's the best flavor. We have our particular taste and profile that we want from Colombia. So throughout the years we've cupped and they've gotten to know us very well and we've gotten to know them very well. So we've aligned the way that we think about coffee. So they know when they find a coffee, they're like, this is a Coffee Collective coffee, they're gonna like this.
So what are you looking for when you're cupping these coffees? What do you think is the optimal sort of Colombian profile, or what are you looking for? Yeah,
well, Colombia is known as the Kenya of South America, so they do have all these fruity, crazy acidic, amazing variety of coffee. But for us, and what I look for in particular, is these clean, balanced coffees. These very, very pleasant coffees that you can drink in the morning, in the evening, all the time. And some of the coffees that has a little bit more kind of intense aroma, flavor structure can be. You get full very fast, where this is just these beautifully well-produced coffees. And that's something that's very characteristic of these coffees, especially from Huila, is they're produced so beautifully. They are so meticulous with every single process, so you get these clean, beautiful, balanced coffees, who also does have some acidity, who also does have some of these traditional things like chocolate and nuts that we also look for in coffee. So it's a coffee for everyone, and I think that's what we look for.
So the Desarrollo we have now is from a few select farmers, and a few years ago, I think 6 years ago now, we actually started working more directly with each of these farmers, and in particular we wanted to try and sort of extrapolate some of these farmers and showcase them as the individual farmers that they are in our range of filter coffees. And we met one person who was like made a big impression on Peter, especially Peter Dupont, the first year he was there. It's just a farmer called Edilfonso Yara, and that's the second coffee that you're getting this month.
Yeah.
And I had the pleasure of joining you, Peter, on the trip back in October to Colombia and visit Edilfonso Yara and his wife, Maribel.
Yeah.
And their 3 children. I can't remember
3
their
children.
names.
Maria Lucia is the oldest.
That's the oldest, and she actually works now at the cupping lab in Gigante.
It's a very interesting way of looking at coffee, and our partner there, Caravella, it's something they focus on a lot. They try to get children of coffee farmers to work within the organization in kind of the next quality grading, or as a QC, who's a quality controller who walks around basically an agronomist and helps the farmers out. And for this little family, they plan on getting every single child to do something with coffee, but not as a farmer, but as something what they would call further up the chain.
So Edilfonso and Maribel has this small-ish farm.
Very small.
Amazingly located with slopes on one side where all the coffee trees go up to a mountain, and then on the other side a steep valley with the most magnificent view. Completely mind-blowing being there. But I think what impressed me the most was to see their sort of enthusiasm and professionalism in their approach to having a coffee farm. And it's a fun sort of power couple, as I like to call them, those 2 people. So how do they divide the work between them?
Alfonso is definitely, let's say, he's not the head of the house. Let's call it that. He takes care of the farms and a lot of kind of the structural things that he learned from his dad. But Maribel is, she's the power and the push in that house. So she helps out with everything that needs to get sorted, but she also has new ideas. She's the one who pushes kind of innovation and also really keeps Edilfonso's foot to the fire, you might say, in terms of let's make something amazing out of it.
An astonishing coffee, and I think flavor-wise it's also super interesting. It's I would say it's one of the cleaner Colombians that I've tasted, and very aromatic as well.
So this year we experimented for the first time getting 2 shipments, which means that we got one home in November for Christmas sales, fresh coffee.
Was the one, so the Desarollo that we sent to you guys in back in January was from that first shipment, and it was actually a different lot of Desarollo. And now the second one has come, so it's even though you've had Desarollo a few months ago, this is a completely different outturn, actually, a completely different lot.
Different coffee.
So that'll be interesting to see if any of you can remember the taste differences. And then I also think it's quite interesting to taste the taste difference going from this mixed lot of different farmers, even though it's not a lot of farmers, they're in the same region, processed in a similar manner, going to picking out one of these individual farmers and then seeing what does he produce and seeing what is actually the difference. Let's brew some of these coffees.
Yeah, let's do it. So, first off, when I brew coffee, there's a few things that I put a focus on, especially in the bath, but also at home. And that's keeping all the variables that I can control, making sure that those are on point. So, making sure that I weigh out the exact amount of coffee that I need. I make sure that my water is hot enough. I make sure that my vessel that I brew in is at a reasonable temperature, so it's not right out of the fridge. And I make sure that I wet my filters and everything is in order. I'm gonna make a bigger jug, so a double portion, as we would call it here, so we can both have some coffee. So I've weighed out a little over 32 grams. The end result of ground coffee, I want to be 32 grams precisely. So a good thing to start with, and I always do this, is just to wet the filter a bit. That's my 32 grams of coffee now goes in, and I try to put it as much as I can in the middle. We want an even kind of level. So if you imagine the water falling through this funnel, it's nice if we have a focus on the water being distributed evenly, that also the coffee is distributed somehow evenly. So now we've got the coffee in and we're ready to brew. So here I have my water. It's around little under boiling. So if at home, if you boil your water, just let it sit for a couple of minutes, just until it falls in temperature. So it's around that, a little above 90 degrees Celsius. And I basically am going to start with a bloom. So I'll start my timer and I'll start to add some water. And the general rule for blooming and what we use in the bars is 2 grams of water per 1 gram of coffee. So we use 32 grams of coffee, which means that we use around 65 grams or 64 grams of water on top.
So it means that you can do your own math at home and just think, okay, I'm just going to brew half of this.
Yeah.
Then it will be 16 grams of coffee, 250 grams of water in total, about 32 grams for the initial bloom.
Exactly. And now 30 seconds has passed, a little bit more, and now I'm going to start my pour. And we do a continuous pour, which means that we constantly add a little bit of water and make sure that we move it around to integrate all the coffee in the brew.
If you have a really good pouring kettle, you're able to control the flow. And for us, it kind of makes sense to keep sort of the same flow rate throughout, rather than pulsing where things goes. You've got a lot of water in and then it draws down, and a lot of water and draw down, then to have a consistent flow through.
Yeah.
But try it out.
Like, you have to love patterns, you have to kind of love consistency and doing the same thing over and over again. So for me, for example, when I'm pouring here, I'm looking at the foam at the top, and I'm trying to break it up in the middle and then pushing out all the foam. So I make sure that I can see where I'm moving and make sure that I've covered all the coffees again and again and again.
And that's the beauty of doing a hand pour compared to a lot of regular coffee machines, is that a lot of them will just have like water dripping down in the middle. That means that the middle part of your coffee is over extracted, but you actually have a lot of coffee sitting around the edge that is just not even getting really wet. It's sitting high and dry, as we call it, and completely not extracting. That means that there's a lot of coffee you don't get any flavor out.
Yeah.
So here you can really control that all the coffee is wetted equally. The flow of the water is the same through all the coffee. So it's both a more economic way of brewing coffee, but you actually end up extracting a lot more flavors out of all the coffee, which is a benefit.
Thank you.
Go. Get my old cup out of the way.
Yeah. So before pouring, I like to just give it a bit of a stir. Just because when you do extraction of coffee, there's all these different types of aroma structures. And they're all different weights, different structures, different densities. So when after you've brewed, the coffee will be layered. Some of the lighter stuff will be on the top, some of the little bit more heavier sugars and stuff will be at the bottom. So it's a good idea before you serve, anything you do, just like give it a stir, so make sure that everything is mixed, so you get a good bit of everything.
It's really good.
Yeah.
Super acidic, like a lot more acidity than I would have just initially expected. You're thinking Colombian, you're just sweetness and balance, but it has such a nice acidity. We're not talking like a Kenyan acidity.
No.
It's not like overpowering, but it's there to that amount where my mouth just starts watering, and I feel like, oh, this is alive. This is a product that has life in it. Mm.
Super nice.
And compared to the Desarollo, which I had over here, of course I shouldn't suggest too much to you. You should taste it yourself, but I found them to be quite different. Like Desarrollo is for me a lot more like chocolatey, even more balanced, a little more full-bodied.
Yeah.
I'm getting like a slight like a pecan nut, but like in a really nice, not bitter as walnuts often are, but like that sweet caramelly kind of thing in the Desarrollo. And on the Edilfonso, I'm getting a lot more like juiciness and going back, I actually get like a little bit like a berry, kind of like a gooseberry kind of note. Like it's
very much in the bitterness in it is very much, which is very characteristic of Edilfonso's farm. It has this kind of green tea, black tea kind of structure to it, which is just every time I would cup it blind, I'm always like, this has got to be from their farm, because that's just their flavor.
Thanks a lot for sharing all the information.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for brewing the coffee for me. I can be the typical boss with a hand in a pocket and leaning on the table and just enjoy the show.
Yeah.
Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next month for another round of subscription videos and 2 exciting coffees for you then also. Thanks for watching.